Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, United Nations Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, December 5, 2136. To recount the harrowing hours after the initial clash would be a strenuous ordeal in itself. The Terran's intention was to turn this into a lengthy battle. One which could go on for days. It was gut-wrenching to see Arxer vessels, huddled around Scilla's azure shape. I knew this was a facsimile of what the Predators saw on Earth. There had never been a chance of holding or retaking the planet, not against a superior enemy. The UN kept our forces active, while rotating personnel to keep fresh eyes on duty. Carlos and Anso were given leave for a short nap, though they were set to return within a few hours. Samantha was going through cups of brown liquid like it was a magic elixir, and Tyler had summoned a mug of his own. As a former officer, I understood his hesitancy to abandon his station. I'm feeling a bit worn out myself. This is the longest battle I've ever witnessed. They're supposed to end in the span of a few hours. Any update, Sovlin? Tyler stifled a yawn, and shook his head to avert sleepiness. Break down the Arxer's current movement. I blinked my heavy eyelids. Sir, the Greys haven't deviated from their orbital positions. They're on high alert, since our fleet is utilizing these hit-and-run tactics as you call them. And the FTL disruptors are holding? Yes, sir. UN ships are emitting that signal loud and clear, since we're outside the reach of Scilla's transmitters. Don't want the bastards warping in right atop us, like we did to them. Good. And Sovlin? You look like shit. Get some rest, I'll have a tech cover for you. I disembarked from my seat, knowing that I wasn't much of a tactical specialist with my current brain fog. The humans weren't going to win this war by exhausting their crew. It wasn't clear how long we could stay in a state of combat readiness. Even a Predator would tire of stress-driven situations over an extended duration. My paws shuffled into the mess hall, and I collapsed on the cool floor. Gojids certainly weren't built for constant adrenaline. It was a matter of time before the humans' efficacy diminished as well, and our resistance crumbled. Predators tired of a chase after a while, which was why prey gained their flight impulse. When Carlos and Sam discussed their legends with Silene, they left out their historical battles. I could fill in the blanks well enough from the Federation's knowledge. Tyler had discussed Earth's world wars, though in limited detail. The first conflict was a particular display of primitive barbarism. Its trench warfare was either exaggerated, or had resulted in sloppy performances from their soldiers. The fact that it took so long to sue for peace was stubbornness. It was the refusal to surrender that Carlos mentioned. A human's body and mind would break before their will. I snoozed on the mess hall floor. My dreams were broken, bits of harsh memories sewn together. Tyler's confirmation that humans fought wars for thousands of years looped through my head. My brain fused that encounter with Zarn's initial briefing. The TAC-CAN doctor had been emphatic, stating that Terrans tormented each other through constant battle. Humans are conquerors, who derive pleasure from dominating others. That is what their explorers have always done on their home world. They are aggressive, brutal, and territorial, Zarn's voice declared. Tyler hurling me into the cabinets resurfaced. It's just how we are, man. The imagery became increasingly surreal and chaotic, as my subconscious grasped at examples of their empathy. The humans had allowed a Gojid hospital ship to pass at the border skirmish. Those pilots' radio chatter had conveyed a desire to talk, not fight. Throughout that clash, their forces ignored the vulnerable colony and hammered our military outposts instead. Those weren't the actions of out-of-control brutes. A calloused hand shook my shoulder, and I groaned as I stirred. The explorers on Venlol Prime hadn't done what Zarn implied. First contact should have seen Tarva's world conquered, when even Tyler acknowledged that invigorating drive. How could I understand mankind's dichotomous nature, when the past and the present were contradictions? If I solved that riddle, it might give me an honest perspective on the Gojid's monstrous side too. Sovlin, you can't just sleep out here. Carlos was hovering over me, and taking care to avoid my bristling spines. We let you get a few hours of shut-eye, but someone's gonna step on you. I rubbed my eyes. See, Carlos? Are humans, as a species, conquerors? I don't think so. We're warriors, and some people confuse the two. Mix in clannish tendencies and competition, then believe that your enemy is intrinsically different from you. Yes, we felt that way toward our own. But look what the herbivores did to us because of that same belief. You're saying old humans didn't see their enemies as people? Yes. That's the belief that makes monsters of us all. Nobody has empathy for someone that is too Una-like. The pieces clicked in my brain, alongside a rush of horror. The Federation was guilty of the same savagery as the humans. They pillaged and condemned Earth, because predators weren't people. Brutal capabilities didn't just lurk inside primitive uplifts and flesh-eating species. Most concerningly, zero empathy wasn't a requisite to complete atrocities beyond comprehension. But it's not just a trait of the Gojids. Thank the Protector. You're very wise, Carlos, I murmured. I wonder where you learned it from. The olive-skinned soldier sighed. Let's just say I didn't grow up in a stable home. There's a reason I didn't check in on my family post-Earth. I decided that I never wanted to be like my old man, and that I was going to figure things out for myself. And you joined the peacekeepers to get away? Yes. I got assigned to humanitarian missions at first, and it felt good to make a difference. I learned a lot about people, or humans. I learned how to stand in the other guy's shoes. Thank you for trying to understand me, from the beginning. I never deserved it. I'm not so sure you're a bad person. You had that belief I talked about, and it made you a monster. That's as human as it gets, Sovlin. I'm not sure that is a compliment. Oh, it's not. Anyhow, Tyler, Officer Cardona wants us back on the bridge. Let's get to work, huh? Carlos ushered me back into the bridge, a rejuvenated light in his eyes. The situation on Silas appeared unchanged, from a cursory glance at the viewport. Smaller Terran craft harassed the Arxer fringes, while the main UN fleet prevented escape or reinforcements. The Greys weren't challenging our position. It seemed that the demons wanted us to make the first move, while the humans were in no rush to act. Captain Monahan had joined the brown liquid party, with a steaming cup in her hand. The commander was still supervising the bridge, and her puffy eyes suggested she hadn't taken any reprieve. Our warship was playing a supporting role, poking at any Arxer that neared Terran ranks. Combat readiness was maintained on the bridge. If there was an opportune moment, we'd capitalize on it. I strode up to a weary Tyler. Sir. You wanted us back. Shit, I'm ready to tear the Greys a new one. Arrested Onso sauntered up to our group. We're in agreement there. When are we charging in? We're making plans, the blonde-haired human growled. Listen to what we intercepted while you were out. The Arxer got a nice call through there, shall I say, poorly hidden FTL comms. I peered at the sensors officer's screen, and saw video clips from across the region. It was news to me that the Arxer possessed FTL communications. Building such a network seemed beyond their intelligence. How had the Federation never detected this infrastructure, if it existed? Nonetheless, it was tough to argue with footage that couldn't have reached us yet. The first clip Tyler selected was from a probe encircling a military station. Massive hangars were visible from above, alongside a few patrollers circling lazily. Alarms sounded on the base, moments before sleek bombers blinked into existence. I could see the UN insignia emblazoned on their hulls, alongside other retrofits. The upgrades were apparent from what humanity's allies first loaned them. So this is why we weren't given more numbers for the Shadow Fleet. The resources were diverted elsewhere, and not just to the war with the Federation. The Terran bombers swooped down on the Dominion installation, just as they had assaulted Gojid bases. Enemy resistance was wiped out upon contact, unable to hold a candle to this raid. Munitions rained down on the Marshall Station, and obliterated its defensive outfits first. Explosions punished the living quarters next. Any filthy greys still on board were buried. The humans ensured that nothing remained of the base, and that no Arxer escaped off-world. It floored me that the Greys had allocated so few ships to defense. Then again, the aggressive monsters couldn't think of anything but killing. Their singular focus was inflicting torment upon the Tillfish homeworld. It had been a long time since the Arxer met a worthy foe. Samantha swallowed a gulp of her bean drink. It's the same scene on every base we're aware of. Even if these fuckwits take Silas, they'll have no place for the ships to return. Oh, and we snipped the cord on those comms too. I flicked my claws. Nice work. You took the bastards for everything they're worth. We took something else of theirs too, Tyler chuckled. You'll like this, Gojid. The tall human picked out a new video from the data feed. A Terran transport was docking with a streamlined station, which seemed tailored to ship traffic rather than war. More UN craft latched onto other compartments, rather than causing a traffic jam in the main hangar. The primates were well practiced at forced entries. They'd make an opening or pick a lock where necessary. Tyler jumped to an internal security feed, which showed armored humans busting through an emergency airlock. Fattened Arxer guards greeted them with gunfire, but the Terrans overran their garrison. The boarding party mowed down their opposition, and barked to each other about rescuing captives. Several primates returned past the camera, carrying prey aliens that were in poor condition. We've had the plans to liberate the cattle farms since day one. Now that we know how the Greys operate, we fucking hit every farm too, Samantha hissed. Carlos bared his teeth. Our estimates are millions of cattle per sector. How are we going to get them all off-world? They're in our custody, and that's what matters. Tyler suppressed a yawn, and blinked with drowsiness. We'll move as many as we can. That's one hell of a humanitarian victory, Carlos. Forget the logistics, I said. Onso curled his lip. Why aren't the Greys going back for their assets? Because that ship has sailed, buddy, Tyler answered. They threw the whole sector for one rock. Might as well take Silas, they have nothing to lose. Satisfaction swelled in my chest, and the yodel brightened with content as well. The Arxer just lost all major assets and infrastructure across a 100 light-year radius. This could be a pivotal turning point in the war. While the humans had sacrificed Silas, they had undermined the Greys' malice everywhere else. This was cause for celebration, no matter what unfolded in this system. I'd love to see the Predators losing their dim-witted minds, I chuckled. Samantha folded her arms. Would you? Show him what they directed at us. Tyler brought up a single outbound transmission, and the visage of a female Grey materialized. It was the same one taunting the humans at the start of the battle. Now, its maw was agape with fury, its eyes were furious slits. It jabbed its claws at the camera, like it wished to stab the listener through the screen. You irreverent grass munchers really fucked up now. How dare you destroy Dominion assets? I'm going to burn this fucking planet to the ground, the raving Arxer roared. Since you killed my food, I'm going to make a cattle farm solely of humans to replace it. That will put you back in your fucking place. You will regret this. I blinked in confusion. The Greys perceived the humans as equals, and that should be doubly true after our battlefield prowess here. From what I'd overheard, it would go against the Arxer's twisted philosophy to eat another predator. Was this chief hunter really going to go against its government stance, out of spite? I don't think the humans would make good cattle. They're too headstrong and devious. Tyler cleared his throat. That leads us to our plan. Evacuations on Silas were subpar, given their rushed timetable. We will, in no circumstances, stand for humans being captured for that purpose. So what are we doing? Shooting down cattle ships? I offered. If it comes to that and we can't board them, yes. But getting soldiers off Silas just became a priority. The UN fleet is going to engage the Arxer head-on, distract M. Meanwhile, shuttles will sneak through the gaps and rescue as many humans as possible. Great, sir. Just tell me how we're going to get their attention. That's the thing. I will be heading down to the surface. I know it's atypical for an officer to volunteer himself, but a personal matter has come up that I must attend to. Onso hissed in annoyance. You didn't invite me? Where was the sign-up sheet? You can come if you want to. But buddy, it's very dangerous. Dangerous for them. I'm coming with you, end of discussion. That was an interesting way of speaking to a superior officer, but the yodel seemed to get special considerations. I couldn't understand why Tyler would rush off and shirk his station duties. It was an unusual decision to say the least. What could be personal enough to have swayed his judgment? While I didn't want to challenge the big guy, I felt a responsibility to talk some sense into him. Forgive my insolence, but I care about your welfare. You're an officer, sir, like you said. I chewed at my claws, anxious at the risk Tyler was undertaking. With respect, you're more useful up here. The captain wouldn't want you wasting your talents on fieldwork. Captain Monahan has been apprised of the circumstances, and she signed off on my departure, the censors officer rumbled. With this development, I would be too distracted to fulfill my duties. You guys will be fine without me. What development? Personal or not, I can't understand without a clue why you're doing this. Samantha grimaced. We should just tell Sovlin, sir. He'll find out on his own. Tyler narrowed his eyes. Suit yourself. The floor is all yours, Sammy. It's Sam. Anyway, snap to it, Sovlin. I was scanning transmissions from the surface, like Ty ordered, and I keyed into this one. Samantha's pale fingers scrolled through her viewing history, and she picked out a highlighted transmission. I eyed the humans warily, wondering why they had reservations about sharing this information. What could happen on Silas that had any personal impact on myself? The Tillfish genocide was tragic, but I had no connections on the surface. A broken audio clip filtered through the speakers. This is Captain Marcel Fraser. Hot blood rushed to my ears, and a ringing sound drowned out the rest of the transmission. I keeled over against the station, shaking my head in denial. That predator's voice was one I could recognize anywhere. Knowing that Marcel, the human I'd tormented, was trapped on Silas changed everything. Of course Tyler wanted to rush off and rescue his packmate. What would Marcel think of my presence on this ship? What if Slanik is with him? I threw that poor Venlil around like a rag doll. Guilt ebbed through my veins with renewed strength. How was it fair that I was cozy on this ship, while Marcel and Slanik could be captured to a cattle farm? If there was a way for me to trade places, I would do it in a heartbeat. It wouldn't scratch the debt I owed my two victims. I deserved suffering from the beginning anyways, the Terrans were too merciful. Tyler twisted his fingers into my scruff. Sovlin? Shit, this is why I didn't want to tell him. I can't. Tears soaked my cheek fur, and mucus congested my nasal passageways. Gee, good luck, sir. I understand. Hey, I'm gonna get Marcel and Slanik out of there. Just need to pull someone off NAV station to fly my shuttle. I know those folks are a lot harder to replace than us people reading screens. Not sure we can spare a pilot, but I have to get to Silas. I'll go. I can fly. No way. How the fuck would I explain that to Marcel and Slanik? I've flown down during an orbital raid before. Back when I picked up Silene. Carlos and Sam can attest to my skills. It's the best option for the ship, sir. I don't think they'll react well to your presence. You know what I mean. Slanek and Marcel are both pilots. If either wishes to serve me to the Greys, I will crawl into their cages willingly. I just need to get you down there. Let me do this for them, for Marcel. Tyler crossed his arms, deliberating his options. I understood that my victims wouldn't be pleased to see me, but taking a pilot from Navigations could get humans here killed. It had to be an expendable crew member like myself. Besides, from my perspective, failure was not an option. Marcel and Slanek would be saved, if I had to sacrifice myself in the process. Fine, the sensors officer decided. Let's get a shuttle and get moving. Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, United Nations Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, December 5, 2136. Sitting behind the helm of a ship felt cathartic, after my long absence from the captain's chair. Tyler volunteered as my co-pilot, while Anso lounged in the back seat. The yodel seemed too casual for our current suicide mission. Even with the UN's distraction, there was a chance the Arxer would come after us on our descent. Dominion forces were concentrated around Scylla's supercontinent, since circumplanetary targeting was not an option. While the unique geography narrowed the staging points available, it also condensed settlements into a single region. That meant less bombs were needed to cover the planet. Our plan was to slip the shuttle in on the ocean side, as the Terrans hounded the Greys head-on. I wondered how our original defensive line, which had vanished into the atmosphere, would factor in. Perhaps they can cover our ass during atmospheric re-entry. That's if they're not involved with the rescues themselves. Those vessels would be the easiest ones to sneak down to the surface, given that they didn't have an Arxer buffer in the way. Getting back up to orbit would be a challenge though, and the Greys watched for evacuation ships. Small patrollers weren't built to tote more than a handful of passengers regardless. Outside help was required to rescue entire platoons. Tyler blinked his icy eyes. Take us in, Sovlin. Godspeed. You think predators would build guns into evacuation shuttles, I grumbled. Might be helpful for your trigger-happy pal to shoot anything that moves. In most events that we're using these, it's a dire emergency and we're abandoning ship. These aren't average transports. Anso narrowed his eyes. But why can't we abandon ship with guns? I don't build these things. Are we going to sit here and argue about this all day? This was no time for playful banter. Action was picking up on the viewport. The Terran fleet moseyed in with purposeful movements, and ensured that the Arxer spotted their advance. Dominion vessels rushed out to meet the numerically inferior armada, leaving the ocean side open. I increased our acceleration, and broke out of our low-emissions glide. Until now, our shuttle had been taking a quiet course to flank the enemy. It was impossible to tell which ship was commandeered by Captain Monahan. Carlos and Samantha were in over their heads alone on sensors, but I trusted our replacements to pick up the slack. The worst Terran crew member was probably more fit for service than the average herbivore. Humans were nothing if not competent in combat. We just needed this distraction to work as planned, to reaffirm that very idea to the Greys. The Terran armada dispensed a few explosives to attract attention. The Greys took the bait, once their unsophisticated brains zeroed in on the UN's aggression. Backing down from a dual-signaled weakness, the humans and the Arxer were both obsessed with not appearing infirm. Pride was a shared trait between the two predator species, and seemingly, our primitive yodel. I was unconvinced Anso wouldn't run off and get us killed the second we landed. My eyes darted to our data feed. It seems our side is getting their snouts bashed in. I hope this is worth it. In close-range combat, the UN was unequipped for a confrontation without resorting to tricks. The humans' front line was getting picked off several at a time, evidenced by the explosions in the viewport. I wasn't sure how much time they could buy us, so I kicked our speed up another notch. No Arxer had come to intercept our shuttle, and we had breached Scilis high orbit already. My heart was hammering in my throat all the same. Perhaps my fear was for the crew we'd abandoned. Our minimal numbers couldn't resist an Arxer charge. There were less than 1,000 vessels in the Shadow Fleet. The Dominion had 6 times that ship count at hand, and were using most assets at their disposal. Following their humiliation across the sector, this was personal. Rare instances of teamwork sprouted, with the Greys ganging up on wounded Terran craft. We need more numbers. Surely the UN defensive line is coming any second, right? Blips blinked onto my radar, as friendly contacts emerged from Scilis Orban Q. The Arxer had learned that humans practiced ambush tactics, and their rear flank was ready for the sneak attack. The enemy vessels swiveled around on a dime, unleashing munitions with prejudice. The resurfacing Terrans lobbed explosives back, desperate to stem the tide. The Greys' onslaught was unrelenting, with minimal attention given to any inbound missiles. "Pick up the pace," Tyler barked. "I imagine we're pulling all ships back at any moment." I sighed in exasperation. "I'm going as fast as I can. Do you want the ship to break apart on descent?" Onso bared his teeth. "Is it better to get gunned down up here? As the humans say, no guts, no glory." "There is no glory in being scattered across Scilis orbit. What is wrong with you?" "Yeah, I think we need to wean you off Earth sayings, buddy. You interpret them all with the utmost aggression," the blonde predator muttered. "I'll try again." "Ah, a predator. Its eyes are forward-facing, and it flashed its teeth." The Yodel utilized a high-pitched voice, and faked an occasional stutter. "It's an evil abomination and needs to die. That better, Tyler?" "You're too much." The primitive was distracting me from my approach, so I shut his antics out from my mind. The shuttle obeyed my commands, its slender frame humming softly. I offered a final bit of juice to the engines, and they answered with a hearty push. This would be a tricky entry, but there was no option to follow safety guidelines. If the Arxer circled over to us, we would be easy pickings. Marcel and Slanik's survival relied on us getting through to the planet. I'd rather take a riskier path, and no, I'd done everything in my power to save them. Everyone on board this shuttle was willing to gamble with our fates, for our comrades' good. The thought of the duo in an Arxer farm made my blood simmer. It was an unacceptable outcome. Both of them had suffered enough at my paws. The shuttle blazed toward Scilis' azure surface, and I leaned forward with concentration. The Shadow Fleet was pulling back, while the UN defensive outfit covered for them behind enemy lines. Those re-emerged friendlies followed suit shortly after, dipping back into the Tillfish world's atmosphere. A few Greys gave chase, not wanting to let the Terrans slip under the radar again. 2 Arxer cruisers changing course, and targeting us for interception, Tyler growled. I gritted my teeth. They won't catch us. They won't try to follow this descent. My claws smacked the throttle lever, and pushed us well past recommended output. We hurtled toward Scilis at a breakneck pace, while the Arxer clocked in at sensible speeds. Their vector lessened the distance between us, but it wasn't closing the gap fast enough. The planet ahead was enlarging much quicker, and our trajectory scraped the edge of the atmosphere. Humans built for durability, so I had to trust that emergency shuttles could take a beating. Actively accelerating into a descent was madness, and even Tyler looked nauseous. The shuttle frame quivered from the stress, sending jolts through my body. Controls offered erratic responses, and I warred with the steering column. Alarms blared from the main systems, warning us of excessive heat. The temperature climbed on the interior accordingly, as hull shielding failed to contain the environmental effects. Incineration was an agonizing way to die, an undercurrent of fear ebbed through my veins. I cobbled myself together enough to check our sensors. The Arxer contacts were pulling back, and our track on them was spotty. That meant they were losing us as well. I hurled all power into reverse thrusters, and corrected our descent angle. The harness dug into my shoulders, as it restrained me during the sudden shift. Tyler's face had gone ashen, and he squeezed his eyes shut. The massive predator was not enjoying the turbulent ride. The shuttle's velocity slowed, though not before our hull had taken a beating. "I've got it under control," I gasped out. "Going to bring us in low and fly to the stated coordinates." Tyler groaned. "You unstable, neurotic gojid. You were about 2 seconds from getting us cooked." No guts, no glory. Sovlin's an honorary yodel after that stunt. On so yip. Don't insult me like that, I thought to myself. I grew up with electricity. I leveled out the shuttle's flight course, once we neared the choppy water. The waves were a blur at our speed, zooming by as I gunned it toward our location. It was dizzying to look at our surroundings, but the human was gawking all the same. It was rare to fly with such quickness in atmosphere, due to civilian traffic and hazards. You don't realize how fast supersonic flight is in space. Tyler pressed his hand to his chin, and turned his eyes toward me. Here, you can tell what our velocity is. You see the world zooming by. I drummed my claws on the console. There's no time to waste. I'm just keeping enough altitude to clear any buildings. Marcel's coordinates are inland a bit. You did great, Sovlin. But hey, I'm still not sure it's a good idea for you to make an appearance. Marcel visited me in jail. I hope my presence will not be an undue burden on him. I will comply with whatever his wishes are. Our shuttle cleared wide patches of ocean, and another yawn crossed Tyler's face. The sensors officer hadn't slept since the battle commenced. I suspected the big predator craved a distraction. He could chat anyone's ear off, if he got started on a topic he liked. Perhaps he'd be interested in jawing about his family? The shoreline would be visible within a minute, so he just needed to stay awake a little longer. I cleared my throat. What's something you did as a child that you cherish, Tyler? Right on. Me and my pops used to go out to the lake, rent a boat, the human reminisced. We'd sit out there for hours and shoot the wind. You know, enjoy nature. Our relationships become estranged, but I miss fishing with him. We caught some real beauts. Your favorite childhood pastime is water hunting. Your father took his kid to do this. Hey, chill out. It's not like we ate any. We just caught M on a hook, took a picture, and threw M back. Then what was the point of catching them? Just when I stop thinking of you as predators, you say shit like that. You torment fish for father-son bonding time. Onso suppressed a growl. I rarely cried predator, but that is twisted and unnatural. It would be fine if you were seeking food, but you are just doing it for kicks. It's just a way to relax, man. And maybe some humans do like hunting, so what? It's not like we're killing them. Disgust swelled in my chest, hearing the predator discuss hunting as relaxing entertainment. I could picture the blonde beast on a boat, giggling as he toyed with a suffocating fish. To think that a father passed those behaviors to his son. How could an empathetic species consider that a socially acceptable pastime? How did Tyler not see how fucked up that hobby was? I brooded for the rest of the journey, scowling out the windshield. Buildings blurred beneath us, alongside charred ruins and mushroom clouds. There was no telling if Marcel's corner of Silas was intact. That human, who I knew was vegetarian, would surely recognize the ethical flaws in his pack-mate's sadism. I hadn't thought Officer Cardona was a vicious animal before now. Tyler tapped my shoulder as we landed. Shit, I'm sorry. I know that's a sensitive subject for you guys. I was just thinking about the one time my dad was proud of me, and it was that. Well, that's fucked. Your father instilled heinousness in you. Parents have a responsibility to teach their kids good values, I managed. Right. We cool? Yeah. Let's go kill some Arxer. I couldn't look at the primate the same, thinking of him learning predation. Humans claimed that they didn't hunt in the modern day. Noah said their meat was grown in labs. Clearly, that wasn't the whole truth, if Tyler had no qualms about his family outings. How could any feeling person go along with that? Tyler admits Terrans are violent and bloodthirsty. Sometimes, those base instincts must be given higher consideration than their empathy. Humans police themselves with moral laws. Progress was still needed on the specifics. When hunting was ingrained in their ancestry, it made sense that remnants persisted into the civilized era. The predators just needed an introduction to proper values. I was certain well-meaning brutes like Tyler could learn that animals weren't playthings. I parked the shuttle on a sidewalk, in close proximity to Marcel's coordinates. With the Arxer traipsing about, this was no time to relapse into human phobia. Onso snapped his gun up and clambered out into the open. I checked my surroundings, before raising my own weapon. There was nothing around us besides the faint glow of dawn's sunlight. Marcel, do you read me? Tyler croaked into his radio. It's me, Tyler. Your better half. We've landed, but I don't have a visual on you. The pavement was rough beneath my hind legs, and the air felt acrid in my throat. I steered a wide path around tillfish bodies in the street, as did the human. Terrans were averse to death on the Gojit cattle ship, but this was a different response. Tyler had a case of the shakes, rather than wanting to puke. His binocular eyes twitched in an odd way. I wondered darkly when his last meal occurred. Muzzle flashes appeared in our periphery, and I dropped to the ground on instinct. The human herded Onso into a storefront. I scurried over to them on shaking legs. Bullets peppered our refuge, as Arxer enemies rallied to our location. The raiders had established a heavy presence in the city. What if they were looking for Terrans to round up? The blonde human tossed an explosive into the street, and high-pitched growls echoed through the air. Peeking through the broken glass, I saw mutilated greys soaked in blood. Whatever Tyler deployed sent shrapnel in a wide radius, and caught the aggressive beasts off guard. The surviving enemies circled back to regroup, giving us a breather. Marcel, tell us you're still alive, bro. We're right on top of you, and there's no signs of friendly activity. Have you relocated? Tyler panted. The Yodel blinked his dilated eyes. Let's get back to the ship. I think they're. Shit, Tyler, it's good to hear your voice. Gunfire sounded in the background, and audible scratches surfaced from Marcel fumbling his radio. We're in the sewers. Need backup ASAP. That information gave me the adrenaline boost I needed. I unloaded a magazine at the approaching Arxer posse, in the hopes of pushing them back. Marcel's packmate jerked his pupils downward, and rushed over to a manhole cover. The predator searched for a lever, finding one with his hands. Tyler tugged at the mechanism, and robotic systems popped the hatch. Onso growled, as he took down a grey with a well-placed shot. The Yodel protested when Tyler pulled at his shoulders. The primitive was the first to descend into the manhole. The human insisted on being the last one to enter, and hurried me to the ladder next. I hopped down the rungs, jumping into the mucky tunnel. Tyler dropped onto the ground, landing awkwardly on his ankle. He'd sealed the cover behind him, and I hoped that would delay our attackers. Thankfully, our shuttle could be locked to human biometrics. That should prevent the Arxer from running off with our ride. We didn't need the same problem I had on the Harchan's blissful modernity. My leg is fucked. Double time it, people, the tall Terran barked. Onso, if you ever wanted to charge in, now's a good time. Now that we were in the tunnels, I could detect the same gunfire I'd heard on the radio. My ears assured me the fight was still ongoing, but Slanik had already been wounded before this clash. With Marcel stuck guarding his Venmal buddy, there was no telling if he could best the Arxer. His band was lucky to survive on Silas this long. I channeled my inner Onso, dashing off like a madman. This was my opportunity to save the human I'd brutalized, and give some meaning to his decision to spare my life.